A very good morning to you and welcome to Just Africa. We're reaching you live from our studios. Now, in recent years, Africa's creative economy has emerged not only as a cultural force, but as a billion-dollar industry that is reshaping global perception of the continent. From Nollywood in Nigeria to the fashion houses of South Africa, from Ghana's economic booming music exports to Kenya's growing digital art scenes and Senegal's global art footprints, Africa's creative industries are proving to the world that they are both economically viable and globally competitive. Welcome once again to Just Africa. I am Oyinpreye Krumale, and I'm not doing this by myself. Hello.
Good morning. Thank God it's Friday.
Yes, it's like green and white.
You already know the country I
Nigeria.
represent. Good morning and welcome to Just Africa. I am Olumide Sokoya. So we're talking about the creative and cultural industry.
Yes.
It's an industry that is actually booming in Africa. It's estimated to be about $4 to $5 billion, and it's also estimated to shoot up to $20 billion by 2026. Now, when we talk about the creative industry, we're talking about music, film, visual art, tourism, fashion. I mean, these all contribute a whole lot into the creative industry. And, you know, it's something that Africa is represented in a positive light, because when people talk about Africa, you always hear about hunger, this, that. But when you talk about the creative industry in Africa, it is booming. One of the areas I like to talk about is music. Afrobeat has gone viral. It's everywhere. Afrobeat, high life, to South Africa's Amapiano. I mean, it is really booming, and it is something that, yes, we are actually proud of. And like I said earlier on, it could actually shoot up to $20 billion because it's contributing about 4% of Africa's total gross domestic product, and it will create over 20 million jobs. That's what it's projected to create.
Okay, so I like the projections you just gave and that brief analysis. However, if the Nigerian movie industry annually is making $7 billion,
Yes.
Because I think what I'm trying to get at is that there is the tendency,
Yes.
and the prospect for us to exceed that $20 billion you talked about. We've
Yes.
not started talking about African and Nigerian festivals that we currently have. You know,
Yes.
a few weeks ago we talked about Ojude Oba,
Ojude Oba.
and we've not started, you know, put into consideration some of the African festivals that we have in northern part of the country, in the southeastern part of the country.
Yes.
Or we move to Kenya, and some of the cultural representatives we have there in South Africa, I equally know, have a very, very rich cultural heritage, and we could see them in their festivities. They showcase them. And one of the things that we have not really touched about is even the movie industry. Now, you know, Nigeria is belling the cat, and Nollywood seems to be the biggest, one of the biggest, or second largest in the world when it comes to movie production, if not maybe third or second. So the one thing we have not really put our eyes and our minds and our hearts to do is exporting the African identity. Exporting the African identity out of the continent of Africa. You know, there is always this documentary that is played, and it's talking about leather bags and the fashion, because they are crafted with their hands, and the kind of billions of money that, in fact, it actually went down to talk about the rudiment and how that leather industry that is not made with machines or factories, but with the handcraft, how it started and became a child of necessity, and how now it has grown so much that we are now exporting those handcrafts. We need to not only sustain it, but to also promote it in the global market, because that is one of the only ways we can sustain our heritage and equally, you know, by way of technology and movement, transportation, transport our culture out there to the world.
I think another sector that we've not really harnessed well is the tourism sector. We have so many historical tourist sites. I mean, we have Olumo Rock, we have Ikogosi with the hot and cold water.
That should be in Osun State.
Yes, we have so many of these. I mean, earlier on in one of our programs, we were talking about airports being used as tourism. these are historical sites that we really need to. And if you go to some of these, I mean, I don't know how well the National Museum in Nikon is well, but I'm sure, yes, it's still maintained to a certain level of standard. Even the slave camp in Badagry, I mean, those are tourism places where we need to really, really promote, where we need to, first of all, we need to find a way of maintaining it, making it, look good, so that when tourists come, we can actually generate a whole. Dubai is everybody's always running to Dubai. Why? Because they have taken it to a level of standard whereby people see it fascinating. They find it very fascinating to just go there and see, the Burj, the Taj Mahal, and all that. So we need to also find a way of exporting, or better still, investing into tourism, so that, yes, we can actually make or generate a lot of income. And it also create jobs.
Exactly. The tourist industry that you just referred to, I don't think we have done much as a country. Because if you look at the Ministry of Tourism and Hospitality, I think it was yesterday we were speaking to one of the managers within that sector, and he actually reeled out most of the challenges that they face when it comes to hospitality industry, the hotels, and how they need to be managed in order for them to, because if you mismanage those kind of facility, you are actually speaking on behalf of the country, because when tourists and visitors come into the country, these are the places they go to relax and to live. And if you cannot present an environment that is of global standard, then you have talked down your country. Remember, we had a conversation with Dr. Idawosa here, and he was talking about his experience in Dubai.
Yes.
And how a cab driver, was actually talking to them, and even the receptionists in the hotels were telling them, that we're trying to sell the country to them, that, hey, bring your friends, come to our country, come and have fun, come and live well. It is something that is going to be very, very, and it was like, okay, this is a cab driver, or this is a receptionist in an hotel. So probably the orientation they've been given is that this is a destination for foreigners, for tourists, and for visitors. And the more they come, that is our major earning power, like IGR for our country. So you must do everything within your power to make sure that when you come into contact with these people, you sell your country as a product to them, so they're going to buy it. But now that we're talking about this, the Ministry of Tourism, how much is our budget for this year? I don't think it's even up to 15 or 20 billion naira. And those are challenges that we are facing.
In as much as we are trying to market Lagos to the world, make it, the metropolitan state of the country and all that, one of the areas that I believe we've been exporting it, but we need to take it a step further, is our delicacies. I mean, if you go on Instagram, you see different videos of people trying out banga and starch, trying out eba and ewedu and all that, and it's impressive, it's inspiring when you see a Westerner trying eba and ewedu, and he's smiling and saying, he's giving reviews of how this is how it tastes, you should try it. It means that actually we are actually doing good outside.
Yes,
and we need to also try as much as possible to promote it. We need to also tell our children, instill it in our children, because sometimes, we get carried away when we emigrate to other countries and all that, and we want to,
I want to eat pepperoni fries.
And all that.
Pepperoni fries. What? Boli by the roadside. Roasted plantain.
With
fish and red oil. It's a good delicacy. And food is one of the parts that introduced any culture and any people to the world. It's going to be part of what we're talking about today. Today in Just Africa, we will dive deep into the vibrant and diverse and lucrative world of Africa's cultural and creative industries. Industries that are increasingly driving GDP growth, employment, and the international influence and youth entrepreneurship across the continent. Now, with the support from technology and diaspora engagement and a new wave of global demand for African narrative, Africa is no longer on the sidelines of the global creative economy. In fact, it is at the center of it all. And on that note, we'll go on a break. When we come back into the studio, our conversation will be going a different dimension. You don't want to miss that. It is Just Africa, and we're reaching you live from our studios at Sook News Television. Stay with us. Welcome back. Many thanks for joining us on the program. It's Just Africa, and we're reaching you live from our studios at Soup News Television. Globalization. Some of the criticisms against globalization is that it steals our identity away. It steals culture away. And you have some of the Camorus, the Emekas, the Chukwubukes, and will I say the Priyes, and the Uches, or some of the Adamus, like we know, and the Aromes, local names. By the time they leave Nigeria, probably to the UK, to Canada, to the United States of America, to Luxembourg, to Australia, you name it. And when they come back, their intonation has changed. Language, take away food, take away some of these critical things from as a component, as culture from a specific people. It is good as saying they've lost their identity. Welcome once again on the program. We have in the studios with us to continue this conversation, Bayo Olaoye. Welcome to Just Africa.
I'm glad to be here.
Great,
Thank you very much.
great. So, we're talking about culture. First of all, when you look at culture entirely and you want to pinpoint some of the areas or sectors you felt we have lost it and we need to make amends, or the part of the culture where it sells, Nigeria and abroad, what sector would you take a look at?
Thank you very much. If you want to talk about promoting culture in Nigeria, we have an infrastructural deficit.
Okay.
Let me come down. We don't have the institutions or the structures to promote culture. Now, the National Theatre. Let me begin with the National Theatre. National Theatre was left derelict for so many years until the Bankers Committee came together and renovated it to world standard. And now we are looking forward to performances taking place there now. Then you have the national troupe.
The national
troupe, which had been abandoned for some time. And those of us in the media were talking about the national troupe. What? Because the national troupe goes abroad to propagate and promote Nigerian culture. Dances, arts, culture, music. Now, that one is also coming up. Then,
so, Baba, I need you to dwell on the national troupe for a while. There are so many dances, whether in Yoruba culture, in the Hausa culture, in the Igbo culture, in Ijo or Urobo, from the Benue tribes or the Tiv people that seem to be going into extinction. During your days, when you probably were my age, some of those dance steps or those name of dances that used to, operate, that was the dance of the day, and that, showcases Nigeria and African culture abroad. Which of those can you remember?
The last time I was here, I was referring to the Meboi dance.
Dance.
On Lagos Island.
Lagos Island.
That 95% of our youths cannot even perform Meboi dance. There are also other dance steps when you do the kareta on Lagos Island. Okay, let me be more specific now. Simple dance step like Akpala.
Akpala.
How many of our youths can dance Akpala? I'm not talking about Fuji, because Fuji is something else. But traditional Akpala, how many people can dance to Haruna Ishola? How many people can dance to Ayinla Omowura? How many people can dance to Yusuf? Those were in the days when that is the essence of. But we're losing it. Now, if you talk about dance steps, you cannot run away from our dialects. Yoruba, Igbo. At the time, I told you the Igbos were shouting that from the rooftop that their culture was going to extinction. The Yorubas also were complaining. The Hausas were complaining. And this thing starts from the home. Sometimes ago, my grandmother was very annoyed with me that I was speaking English to my grandchildren and cautioned me about the implications of. And I agreed with her at the time. But I said that you have to communicate with these children, first of all. she said, okay, the communication is enough in the school. Why don't you, at home, teach them how to ekaro, ekason, ekale, things like that. So I think the neglect is from the home, really. Starts from the home.
Okay. So,
Starts from the home.
All right, so Baba, I'd like us to look at the economic impact of the creative industry. Earlier on, I said it's projected at 4 billion, which could shoot up to 20 billion by 2026. So, but my question now is, if you look at the creative industry as a whole, are we actually seeing this economic impact at the grassroots level, or is it just concentrated in major cities like Lagos, Johannesburg, and Nairobi?
I think is developing from the grassroots. Because if you go to Ajegunle now, at least I know at least about 10 DJs in Ajegunle. DJs, I'm not talking about musical troops, skits, performance, and that kind of thing. The awareness is growing. The social media is assisting. And parents, sadly, are now realizing that you don't have to ape and imitate Western culture. The realities are there. And in schools too. That is why some of us were advocating for the teaching of history in our schools.
Okay.
Because when you talk about the history of a people, you're talking about the culture, the tradition, the evolution of the culture itself.
Okay.
So I think it's a gold mine. It's a gold mine.
Okay. So now, Mr. Bayo Olaoye, there's something that is very, very obvious that most people can relate with, even while they were children and when they become adults. And that is, we're talking about masquerades and its relevance to culture and tradition. What was your experience like, and what was the relevance of that?
Yes, I'm very passionate about that because you're talking about masquerades.
Yes.
In Lagos, I belong to the Adim Eyo. That's the highest Eyo.
Okay.
But sadly, the Archbishop, that's Cardinal Okuji, who's my cousin, called me one day into the monastery and told me, you better stop this. So I stopped. But then later on, he came to realize that regarding Eyo as an abnormality or an abomination when you go to church, it's not realistic. And the Yorubas have a saying that when you respect God, you also respect your culture.
Okay.
So, yes, we were.
So
the masquerades are important because they depict the historical evolution of any society. We must respect them. Although it's been bastardized, usually when you have human beings, some people abuse or misuse privileges. A masquerade is a replica of the gods that we worship.
Okay.
And they should be respected.
Okay. African traditional gods. Yes.
All right, so now let's look at festivals and carnivals. I like to, yes, there might be a wide gap, but if you look at the Notting Hill Carnival and you look at some, like in Lagos here, or the Abeokuta, in Ogun State rather, Ojude Oba Festival. Ojude Oba is actually growing. It's attracting international presence. How can we take it further so that, yes, we can, just like the Nottingham Carnival, where people from different countries, different continents travel down to the United Kingdom just to witness this amazing kind of, people can also start coming down to Nigeria.
Fortunately, most of our traditional rulers now are more or less elitist. They are educated, enlightened, exposed, and they have realized that Ojude Oba has set a precedent that we must follow. I am from a chieftaincy family, and next Friday I'll be meeting Iku Babaye, the Alaafin of Oyo, who is my brother, for the first time. And you see, our traditional rulers now realize that you have to promote this culture. And I can tell you that other towns, other cities are now taking a cue from that. Indeed, in Oyo, when I meet the Kabiyesi next Friday, we'll be looking at our own peculiar festival that will bring people from Oyo to the town celebrate. Not just a one-day affair, but a week-long, where you talk about all dimensions of culture. Food, greetings, dancing, sculpture, arts and painting,
Yes.
and so on and so forth. Okay. So I think it's catching up.
Okay. But
And by the time we all realize it, that's another source of GDP for us.
All right, so I'm also looking at the business angle of these festivals, because something like Ujide Oba, it's going to open businesses for fashion designers. I mean, the Asho case, it's going to bring a lot of people. Hotels are going to make a lot of money from tourists that come in. Even food vendors have the ability or the opportunity to sell different delicacies. How do you think the government in this time can step in and make sure that all this, comes back to the country? All the money comes back to that state.
My colleague and my sister, Bike Dabiri Erewa, told me last week that the people in diaspora, for the next 3 or 4 years, are planning to storm Ujide Oba in different dimensions. Food, dance steps, history, singing, drumming, all dimensions, so that it will be bigger and better. And the awareness is growing. So I see the cultural sector growing up and contributing significantly to the GDP, conveniently.
Okay. So, Mr. Bayo Olaoye, there's this specific question, because whilst you were addressing the issue that had to do with masquerades, and you said it's an historical expression of the gods and African religion or African way of worship. But currently, as we speak, there seems to be a difference, because the religious institution like Christianity and Islam has a way to separate African traditional worship, because they felt is diabolical. So of what part of African tradition expression is not diabolical, that should be embraced by the religious organizations and the state?
So let me come back to the Yorubas. Okay. There's something in Yoruba called Oriki. Oriki.
Yes.
If I'm Akoni, there's an Oriki for Akoni.
Okay, so we need to tell the people what Oriki means.
Oriki is is an appellation of the meaning and the significance of that name. Akoni means somebody in the forefront. Okay. I'm the firstborn of my dad. Okay. So I am Akoni. Okay. That is natural. Okay. There's Akonbi, there's Akonwo, there's Akonji, there's Adio. All these things have significance. But probably, how many parents know the Oriki of their children? Okay. When I was married, my dad warned me, Bayo, man of fair, Oriki. Do not marry a woman that does not have Oriki. Because when you say, Kiloruko, what's your wife's name? He says, Aduke. Aduke. There's an Oriki for Aduke. Just to motivate and appreciate that lady. Okay. There's an Oriki for Anike, Ashake, But these things are not. I think this is part of what National Orientation Agency should be doing. Okay. You go back to our people are people of my own set, my generation, the generation before me. They are passing away, and these things is slipping through our fingers. Okay,
so I need you to address that. The part of tradition that is not diabolical, that you feel religious bodies like Christianity and Islam should embrace, and also that is significant for promoting national coherence and national unity.
The Oyo Festival. To some religious leaders that I know that are very close to me, it's an abomination. And I said, no. Believe that, why should you, taking Holy Communion at the Holy Cross Cathedral, you are going to do Oyo? But I told them that, first of all, my dad was an Adimu, and by natural instinct...
What is an Adimu?
Adimu, that's the highest Oyo.
Okay.
That's the highest. We wear black and white, whatever. That is the highest. Okay. So, and only they we pray to Olodumare. We pray.
Olodumare is?
That is God.
God, okay.
We pray to God for peace, progress, stability, growth, to be healthy. So that is what everybody looks for. And that's what everybody wants.
Okay. So what about other parts of tradition? Same thing that you feel will contribute to national unity and that is devoid of diabolical means?
Another thing is that in Nigeria, among all the tribes, greetings is very important.
Okay.
A Yoruba man can greet you 10 times. When you are going, Udabo. When you come back, Ekabo. When he's passing through, he will say Eku Kale.
Okay.
So there's a greeting for everything, and that embellishes, that promotes community, a sense of communal being, a sense of belonging. You make everybody feels good. Those are issues in culture that we must promote.
Okay.
Also greeting. You cannot, for instance, my grandson cannot shake hands with me.
Okay.
It's not possible.
Okay,
And
so
he must be able to
disrespect.
greet properly.
Okay, so if your grandson cannot shake hands with you, so that is, if he does that, or if he extends his hand to shake your hand, is disrespect.
Yes, then you
so,
correct him
so
immediately.
what should he do normally if he wants to greet his grandfather?
Of course, he has to prostrate.
Prostrate in this 21st
If
century.
it's a lady, you have to kneel down, for goodness sake.
Okay.
Regardless of whatever.
But do we put into consideration what...
That's why we're Nigerians.
Okay, yes.
You can't say, hi. What is hi? No. Olumide Karo. Let me say, Baba, Karo. Shusundada. Ilenko, how's the whole? Or if you had done me a favor yesterday, I say, Oshiano. Those are greetings that are profound. And you can't replace them.
Okay.
So I would like to ask, in going forward now, how can we preserve this culture? You know, earlier on, Krumale said that globalization could also hinder the perseverance of culture. So in going forward now, how can we make sure that culture and globalization do not clash? Because whether we like it or not, we are all coming together. We are exchanging. Globalization is also an exchange of cultures. I get to know your culture, you get to know my culture. But in doing so, I should not also forget my culture. In embracing your own culture, I should not neglect my own culture.
That is what our traditional rulers will be doing now. Instead of meddling in political issues and things that don't affect them. The Ooni of Ife, His Highness Ogunwusi, is doing something that is worthwhile. I think the Obi of Onitsha, the Sultan of Sokoto, these are leaders that are stepping forward to promote culture. Then the institutions can follow. The Institute of African Studies of most universities, what are they doing? They should be listening. They should do research into how our great-grandfathers were living, some of the ethics, some of the ideals that they stood for. And then parents should support them. And we'll get there. I did not mention government because I thought government has so many things to do. And government doesn't know about culture. But if the traditional rulers go to government, they will listen to traditional rulers. So government cannot, Ministry of Culture and whatever, it doesn't. You have about 10, a permanent secretary. No, it doesn't work that way. Let's use our local people, our institutions. Let's use the banks. The banks are, the Bank of Industry now is really interested in culture.
Okay.
Let the banks be involved. And we can promote our culture and earn a lot of money.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bayo Olaoye. Now, on that note, we'll go on a break. When we come back from this break, our conversation will be going to another dimension. Food. It's very, very important. And as Africans, food serves as a very core of the culture. If you go to the West, the Yoruba people, the kind of food, you go to the North, you go to the Southeast, and there are different types of names of this food. And because of the way Nigeria is, we're blended together. an Igbo man could be eating what he finds in the Yoruba culture as if he was born and bred with it. These are significance that brings and unify a people together. And if Nigeria, if we look at it ethnically, we have more than 250 ethnic tribes in the country, quite culturally diverse, then things that brings us together must be those peculiar cultural dispositions that we must bring together to live as one. When we're back, we'll have this conversation. It's Just Africa. Stay with us. Welcome back. Many thanks for joining us in Just Africa. Now, food is an incredibly diverse aspect of culture. In Nigeria, you have fufu, that's starchy food molded in a specific way that appeals to the people, not only in the southeastern part. Jollof rice is quite popular, but injera in the eastern part of Africa, is not that popular. For those of us in Nigeria here, even though it's something that is making the wave. Bobote in South Africa also is another kind of food. Like, as an African, you might want to get yourself acquainted with or maybe try out when you get to that part of town. For those in Nigeria, roasted meat, popularly called suya, will appeal to anyone because it is the delicacy most times in the evening when you close from work and you're going home, probably trying to retire to bed. There are quite lots of them that we feast on in this continent. And to say that food is an incredible part and something very, very significant in the African culture, if you want to find out the truth behind that statement, travel outside the country to Europe and go to African kitchens and let's see how much expensive money you spend in dollars to hit that. Welcome once again to Just Africa. Olumide.
Yes, Mr. Bayo Olaoye, I would like to let us focus on food. Now, he mentioned earlier on about jollof rice. There was a time Ghana and Nigeria had this, healthy competition about whose jollof rice tastes better. And that actually went viral with even people coming from the Western world. They want to try Ghana's jollof compared to Nigeria's jollof. Now, let's come down to Nigeria. In Nigeria, growing up, I enjoyed amala and ewedu. I enjoyed ewa goin and all that. And we also have our own rice. We have a fada rice from Abeokuta. Now, so I'm looking at the situation of how can we harness this? How can we export this food outside the continent, maybe packaged in a way? We've heard stories of China trying to package gari and all that, but how can we export our own delicacies like the suyas, the kilishis, the kokoros, even the baba dudu, that sweet, that's, how can we export these things outside? Just as we have burgers and French fries, pizzas in Nigeria here.
As a Yoruba man, there's an adage that when there's hunger, nothing goes inside the mind. Once you are hungry, and hungry man is an angry man, more or less. That's what I should do. So food is essential, and we have lots of it. I don't want to talk about this jollof rice or whatever. But essentially, let's look at our own indigenous food. Tuwo, I like tuwo a lot. I'm a Yoruba man. Also, I don't play with, ofala soup. There's a soup, Igbo soup that I like from
Fesala.
Fesala, yes. And there's also ugu. I know I use a lot of ugu, vegetable, for my so we have varieties. We have varieties. The food is there, and we can. That is why I commend Amoke. You see, she's been courageous enough to do what she had done, but she will to put some finesse into it. Okay. She needs to. I think she should go into packaging, and packaging is an industry. Packaging is an industry. And I was discussing with you, Prey, when at the time I was saying about this online thing. For food, for you to do online food distribution, there are certain safeguards, healthcare safeguards, and I think that's what Amoke should do now, the next step. Proper technology into packaging.
Okay.
So it's not that the foodstuffs are not there. They are there, but just like Olumide said, packaging. Our food industry to do serious packaging for export, and the market will be there. I know for sure about 5 or 6 women around this neighborhood who almost every week go to Europe, bringing Nigerian foodstuffs, and there are restaurants all over Europe too. So it's a business that is growing too, just like event management, event marketing. These are things that are rising up with technology, and I think there's potential there.
Okay. Now,
and the manufacturing industry should think properly, outside the box, about packaging our food.
Okay. Okay, first of all, because when we have, most of the times we export African and Nigerian foods abroad, sometimes they got returned, like it is now currently in Canada. You cannot take down crayfish to Canada. You need to, just needs to go through flights. You can only spend a day in transition or 2 to Canada. You can't put it in a ship. A ship is going to take about 3 months before it gets to Canada. And the Canadian authorities have been complaining that we do not want bugs in Canada. And you know, by the time crayfish has stayed in the packaging for 2 months, bugs and worms will start coming up.
Right, we have a Nigeria Export Promotion
Council, yes, but in spite of that, most of these countries that accept your food into their country also have an outline of items of the kind of food stuff they will receive into their country. Now, let me take you to another aspect. The yam flour, popularly called elubo. There's someone who traveled or who was called from abroad in the US and in the UK that, look, the ones they have over there are not, it doesn't really give the traditional feel to prepare the food. So they needed to start exporting that from Nigeria to those climes. And indeed, when you go to those restaurants in America or in the UK or in Canada, they are quite expensive compared to the local foods that you have over there. So what do you think that we can do differently? You just mentioned about the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, and that talks about standardization.
NAFDAC.
Okay.
NAFDAC should, instead of running around people selling something in sachets, NAFDAC should go into food, because that's our forte now. That's our forte now. Regulation. Once we can regulate the industry, the Nigeria Export Promotion Council and NAFDAC and the Ministry of Agriculture itself.
Okay.
Once they can collaborate, and then the way it's safe passage for all our foods, all our cuisines. You call it cuisines, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm also looking at doing some sort of intra-African trade when it comes to food. I mean, I would like to go to South Africa. I would like to go to Kenya or anywhere else and still have a taste of amala and ewedu. So how can we come together as Africans in a way that it will not be as expensive in Europe? Because if you go to an African restaurant in Europe, you would pay a lot of pounds, euros, dollars just to have the same. And that's why most of the people over there, the diasporans, anytime they hear people coming from Nigeria, they tell you, please
buy me foodstuff.
Buy me foodstuffs and all that. So I'm thinking of how can we establish on a large scale something like the McDonald's that we have, the KFCs that we have. How can we establish that in other countries? You rightly said, I'm okay. How can we establish something like that?
The banks have to cooperate. The banks too have to cooperate. They have to set up a desk on food the export market, food. They must talk about food. And then the farmers. At the time, there was a controversy about using this kind of fertilizer. That is enforcement, regulation. Once there's regulation, farmers will know what to do. Don't forget that we plant cassava 3 times in a year. We have not seized that opportunity for export. Ideally, The president can order all the 36 states and ask them to do 15 or 20 hectares or 30 hectares of cassava. And that could be, for export. There should be an arrangement for our foodstuffs to be exported because the technology is there. The technology is there.
Okay.
Talking about regulation, we all know, or let me say, let me not use that word, the bottlenecks in getting an approval from NAFDAC to get just a NAFDAC registration number. There's a lot of bottlenecks. How can this be simplified so that someone, the local woman selling maybe boli or something downstairs, can actually have the access to export? Because when you meet some of these people and you ask them, why can't you package this? Why can't we sell? And you hear long stories, compelling stories about how it's going to take or what it's going to even cost.
Olumide, I was referring to red tapeism and bureaucracy initially when we started this conversation. And it's killing initiative, it's killing empowerment, it's killing inspiration. We cannot allow bureaucracy to go into the food system. Don't forget that this food too, they have a deadline.
Yes, perishable.
Perishable, well, yes, they're perishable. And so the Export Promotion Council should take the lead so that banks will follow and then we will have less of government. I don't think government should involve itself in running business. There are professionals, there are institutions. They just need some guidelines from government.
All right.
Okay, let's go to, want to go to fashion?
Yes, I
thought we should just run up with fashion.
That is where we are doing the cutting, but that would be your last word from fashion as we round up.
Kudos to our fashion designers. They are making us proud everywhere, all over the world.
Okay.
And I think, yes, we'll get, it has repositioned Nigeria.
Okay.
Because our girls are doing very well in the area of fashion designing. What I don't like is our youth aping and imitating Western culture. It's not helping.
Okay.
Somebody will be wearing torn jeans and a torn T-shirt and he's telling me it's fashion. No, that's madness.
Okay.
I'm sorry to use the word, but that's how I used to patronize our culture.
All right.
There's nothing wrong in wearing what we are wearing on this set.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And this is where we want to draw the curtain. Thank you so much, Bayo Olaoye, for your time with us, a veteran journalist who joined us this morning for Just Africa. This is where we draw the curtain on the program. My name is Oyinpreye Krumale, and
like I always say, let's start thinking Nigeria, let's start thinking Africa, but it also starts from the mindset. Let's start, exporting and promoting our own culture. I am Olumide Sokoya. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.